Frank, what is your reaction to what authorities have revealed so far?
Well, first, a couple things jump out at me. One is this individual likely was in place at the golf course for up to 12 hours ahead of the incident. That gets to the issue of whether or not a sufficient advance was conducted. I hear the acting director of Secret Service saying, hey, look, this was off the record movement. No one should have known he was going. It was unplanned. Yet in today's day and age, 20 million assault rifles in this country, 31 states that have open carry. Secret Service can't just say that's an off-the-record movement. We're going to treat this with lighter security. Those days are over.
Jeff, we know there's an ongoing investigation into the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. As I just said, the president said we need more help. The agency needs more help. What else is the White House saying?
Well, they're certainly condemning political violence, and both the president and the vice president did in their statements last night. But you're right to highlight what President Biden said on his way out of the White House earlier today, that the agency requires, in his view, more funding. We have seen that the former president is not getting the same level of security that he got when he was a sitting president, which is logical and which is how that works. But because he's now the Republican candidate, and because of these threats, clearly that's something that I think President Biden and others around President Trump are wanting to have reevaluated.
But Frank, even if Congress allocates more money to more protection for the former president, is there enough time between now and the election to deploy more resources, train more people?
No, absolutely not. But, well, the deploy more resources part is going to happen. You're going to see agents injected into the Secret Service from Homeland Security investigations under DHS, parent agency of Secret Service as well. You're going to see a lot more money flowing to local and state law enforcement for manning posts that typically Secret Service might try to man, but that's a short-term Band-Aid to get us through. The longer-term issue is even bigger than throwing money at the problem. We've got to enforce the gun safety laws in this country. ATF's budget was just cut $50 million. That's the agency that's supposed to enforce our gun laws.
Sam, this has now happened twice just in this campaign cycle. Does that signal a huge fundamental change in our politics?
Yes and no. Obviously, we've always had heated politics. There's been a long history of political violence in this country. We've had presidents assassinated before. We've had threats on presidential candidates before. Gerald Ford was on the receiving end of 2 assassination attempts in a smaller time frame than even Donald Trump. On the other hand, you can make the case that the current campaign rhetoric is at a different level of heatedness compared to in the past. Who you want to blame for that, I guess, depends on your vantage point. But I think it's fair to say that, you know, we're in this sort of a larger debate over what is incitement, who is to blame for this. Can we say that Trump is a threat to democracy? I think these issues, these sort of existential political issues, are brought to the fore by Trump and his candidacy. It doesn't justify, of course, or rationalize violence. But that's what makes us different, is that we're in these much more heated debates about what is incitement and what is acceptable political rhetoric.
Frank, the Washington Post reports that authorities have warned Donald Trump for years about the risks of golfing at his own courses, how difficult they are to protect. What makes him so vulnerable there?
Look, as we saw in Butler, Pennsylvania, which was a far more controlled environment, quite honestly, believe it or not, the golf course is wide open, it's long, and your protectee is exposed for hours playing a game that is predictable. He's going to move from hole 1 to hole 2. He's going to keep going. You know what he's going to do once he's there, and he's there too long. So we need to understand that it is virtually impossible today to guarantee the safety of a protectee in an open air environment, and that needs to get listened to by the protectees. The Secret Service advice should be more than just a suggestion.
Sam, Florida Governor, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis says his state is also going to conduct its own investigation because he's got concerns about the same federal agencies that are prosecuting Trump are the ones investigating this attack. Is DeSantis just playing politics here? I mean, the FBI is an impartial organization.
Right. The FBI is impartial. The FBI also has way more resources and capacity to investigate this type of situation than Florida officials. That said, what DeSantis is getting at is a sort of large-scale distrust that has been brewing in Republican politics over the FBI that stems back to the Trump presidency, the fact that Trump has spoken out against the director of the FBI. DeSantis is playing into that. He's noting it, and he's trying to do his own parallel investigation. Be very curious to see what it does and whether it interferes or tries to interfere with the FBI investigation. But in the end, as Frank will attest, the FBI is the preeminent investigative body here and should be in charge of the investigation.
Jeff, is there any way to avoid or to keep this from becoming hyper-political?
That's a great question, Steph. It's hard to answer. I mean, I think from the responses that we've seen on the Democratic side, certainly the president and the vice president, the Democratic nominee, are trying to not make it political. And by talking about increasing resources, that's also addressing a point of criticism from the Republican side. But there's no doubt that political rhetoric is heated on both sides, but it's been especially heated on the Republican side. And the fact that the former president was bringing up conspiracy theories on the debate stage that has led to violence and threats in Springfield Springfield, Ohio is a good example of that. Now, I don't mention that in any way to excuse what happened here. It's outrageous and unprecedented, at least in my time covering politics, to have two potential assassination attempts against a candidate and a former president. But the rhetoric is an issue for sure. And the fact that the former president, is blaming this incident on Democrats does not take into account the role that he has played in terms of raising the rhetoric or raising fears and playing with conspiracy theories on his side.
Frank, you touched on this, but I want you to make it clear to our audience, because you wrote about it in an op-ed for MSNBC.com, that the Secret Service did not fail Donald Trump. What do you think led to this? Just make it clear to us.
Well, it led to this incident, or led to the fact that we have people trying to take out a nominee? Look, we've got a situation in this country where there are way too many bad people with guns, and we've got to get better at taking those guns away from people who should not have them. And this guy is Exhibit A. Arrested and charged over 100 times, including for a fully automatic machine gun in the state of North Carolina, resisting an officer, on and on and on. Yet here's this guy. He's got a gun. He's received it apparently with the obliterated serial numbers. He's a felon in possession. If we had serious enforcement of existing gun laws, we'd have agents who make sure people like that aren't possessing guns.
Conspiracy theories and the fact that they are being pushed so broadly is a root cause of so much of the divisiveness in our country right now. And I want to ask you, Frank, about this news that we just learned tonight. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, has officially banned the Russian media outlet RT just days after the U.S. accused them of spreading disinformation. What is your take on this? Too little, too late? Important move?
No, I think it's a bold move. It needs to happen. We've now got a documented record that the Russian intelligence services are utilizing RT and, by the way, other platforms to secretly, covertly try to shape the thinking of the American mind with propaganda, and really trying to divide us by hot button issues that they're getting into: gender, race. All of this is being pushed at us from an adversary. So I applaud Meta's step today, but Americans need to understand our adversaries want to impact this election, number one. Number two, sow discord and chaos, and they seem to be succeeding.